what is one thing in our life that is irreplaceable, that cannot be saved, that cannot be reacquired, and that is perishable? And that is time. As we all know, time is something that is very precious. So, for most of you who have heard my previous talks on TED Talk, I come from a humble middle-class family in southern part of India. And if you have heard my previous TED Talk, you would also know my life has been through series of failures before I succeeded as an entrepreneur. And one thing that I learned in my life is time is elastic. I repeat, time is elastic. So, coming from a southern Indian middle class family, I did not do great as an engineer. I failed as a device driver programmer. I was fired from my job in 2005, and I felt life was coming down crashing on me, and then something else happened. In over next 13 years, when you look back in 2018, I was named as world's top 100 most influential marketeers on the planet. I became the national best-selling author of series of books. I started building and selling successful companies. I sold 2 companies for multi-million dollars. So all of this happened, and what happened over these 13 years was really transformational. So as an engineering graduate, when I failed in my first job, I couldn't do a device driver programming. I went out and did my MBA from a very reputed business school. And when I came back and I started working, I got my job in Google, and I'm sure you would know, I used to work 40 hours a week and 58 hours of sleeping, and then I thought I was fully busy. Whether it was my girlfriend or my dad, my mom, my parents, whoever, anybody who kind of approached us, I used to tell them, hey, I'm very busy and I cannot spend any time with you guys because I'm working in Google and I'm doing great stuff. And then something very miraculous happened in my life. I started reading biographies of some of the greatest people who have walked on this planet. I started reading biographies of Paramahamsa Yogananda, Mahatma Gandhi, Isaac Newton, Nelson Mandela, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk. So when you read the biographies, you get to live their life. And that's when I realized they have exactly the same 24 hours a day. They have the same 168 hours a week. And they are able to accomplish so much. And I am just doing one full-time job, and I claim I am busy and I do not have time. I knew something was wrong. That's when in the year 2011, I started experimenting, and I said, let's kind of start doing more and see how things go. So my wife got me enrolled in an MBA program in one of the India's most reputed management school. And I then started writing my first book. And I then started teaching in a leading university in India. And then I started biking, which is now a very close to my heart, passion. And then I was doing all of this while I was doing a full-time job. So I was writing a book. I was doing my MBA. I was, riding all over India, coast to coast. And then I was also kind of teaching in some of the most reputed universities. And guess what? I was doing all of this while I was still doing my full-time job. So that is when I realized time is really elastic, and if you really care about something, you're passionate about something, you will definitely be able to accommodate them. So that's my principle number 1 about time and what I learned. Principle number 2 is, we all have heard of this saying, time is equal to money. Especially when I was growing up, I heard a lot of this saying, hey, time is very precious, time is equal to money. And trust me, time is way more precious than money. I mean, time cannot be equal to money. And I'll walk you through some of the examples of why I say this, right? We are here today, all of us, on the October 16th, 2020. Today, once it is gone, it will never come back in our life. We will have October 16th, 2021. We may have October 16th, 2022. And if we are lucky, we will have, October 16th of many years. But the October 16th of 2020, once it is gone, it will never come back. Assume you have a lot of wealth. Assume you have made a lot of money. And if you lose that money, you will definitely, regain that wealth. Again, referencing back to my first TED Talk, when I started as an entrepreneur, it was a very tough job, right? I mean, I used to kind of work in Google, Infosys, some of the largest companies on the planet, and then I suddenly plunged on to become an entrepreneur. After I became an entrepreneur, I kind of hit a rock bottom where I literally had to go take all the gold jewelry that my wife had, my mom had, and then mortgage in the bank, raise the money to run the company. And I kind of felt that, I'm kind of losing the grip on the life because I'm losing all the wealth. And trust me, in 2 years, God graced so phenomenally well that, we did a turnaround and we sold our company for multi-million dollars. So we lost wealth. I mean, personally, I have kind of twice in my life lost all the wealth and built phenomenal amount of wealth. But time, once it is gone, you can never regain that back. I'll also give you a very simple example to understand this further, right? Let's say there is an employee who is earning 50,000 rupees a month, and typically we have 22 working days and 40 hours of working weeks, which means if you are earning 50,000 a month, your 1 hour is worth 284 rupees. Really? 284 rupees? No, I mean, your time is way more precious. So if you have ever lived in the concept, or if you have ever believed time is equal to money, please, unlearn it, delete it. Time is way more precious than money. Moving on, the third principle that I kind of have enjoyed, putting to work in my life is what I call 1440 MIT rule. So once again in life, things started kind of going well. This is about the year 2017, 2018, 2019. These 3 years have been the most satisfying years of my life. And then this is the same time when, my company got acquired. The first time I exited as an entrepreneur, made huge amount of money. And then after that, it is the same time when I became the national best-selling author. My books were kind of selling, vanishing off the desk. And then it's also at the same time where, I was recognized as top 100 most influential marketeers in the world. It was also at the same time I was running the presidential and prime ministerial campaigns for some of the most influential people in the world. While all this was happening, what I was doing was, I was literally working 17 hours a day. I used to sleep in my office, for days together. I used to, probably I used to take shower alternate days or once in 3 days, because I thought taking shower was also a waste of time. So I was like riding on a high tide. And what happened in the process was, I was abusing the God's most important gift, this beautiful body and health. And at the same time, I met a very wise life coach in Pune, Dada J.P. Vaswani. And when I went to meet him, he was kind enough to spend some time with me on a beautiful evening. He told me, Raghav, what you're doing is great and phenomenal, but let me tell you a little secret. Each one of us are blessed with 1,440 minutes in a day. Not a minute more, not a minute less. Doesn't matter, you are the richest of the richest, poorest of the poor, you still have 1,440 minutes. And what he said was, these minutes, these 1440 minutes, there is no guarantee they will be renewed tomorrow. There is no guarantee you will have the same 1,440 minutes tomorrow. So what you need to do is, you need to always go out and do the most important thing first. MIT is most important thing. So what he essentially told me was, in life you need to create 3 buckets. And I have been doing, since that day on, I have been religiously following this. I have 3 buckets in my life. Bucket number 1 is your personal and your family life. This is the most important piece of your life, and you cannot compromise on not having time there. The second bucket is your career, your business, your aspirations. The third bucket is your personal development goals. How can you become better version of yourself every single day? So these are the 3 buckets that each one of us have. In those 1440 minutes, whatever you choose to do does not fall in one of these 3 buckets, you need to rethink if you should really be doing it. I'm not saying don't watch Netflix, I'm not saying don't watch movies, but what I'm saying is, you need to make sure that you are putting them in the right buckets. And as long as things are falling in one of these buckets, you are happy to go out and do it. This kind of rule changed my life. I got back into living a normal life, working probably 8-10 hours a day and spending a lot of time with family. And at the same time, I was reading the biography of Steve Jobs. That's one of my favorite books. And if you have read Steve Jobs' biography, he used to practice a very strange and a weird principle. First, when I read it, I could not believe that someone can think about approaching life in this way. So every single day, Steve Jobs used to wake up and ask one question to himself. What would I do if today were to be my last day of my life? What would I do if today would be the end of my life? And then he used to go on and conquering all the top priorities. And it is such a profound thing, right? I mean, there is no guarantee our lives are renewed for tomorrow. And the moment you start living, doing the MIT, most important thing first, you will see that your life gets transformed. So that's the principle number 3 that I had learned. Now moving on to the next principle of time that kind of helped me leapfrog in my life was a principle that is called do the most fearful task first, or do the most difficult task first. This is an interesting story, and I'll probably come back to the story. But there's a huge study that is done by Harvard Medical School. It says if you pick up an easy task first and do it, then, and if you leave the difficult task to the later point, 94% of the time you will never finish the task, because we are wired in such a way that we don't like difficult tasks. On the contrary, if you pick up a task and start doing the most difficult one first, then there is 83% chance that you will knock off the whole task off the list. And there is also a very famous saying in management which says, eat the frog first. So eat the frog means do the dirty job, or do the stressful, or do the difficult job first. So like I said, when we exited our first startup, I had humongous amount of learning. I learned so much that I had not learned anywhere during my MBA days or my PhD days and all of that. So what we decided to do is, when we were building our second startup, we wanted to bring all the wisdom, all the learnings that we had from our first startup and put it to work. And that's when I and my co-founders, we created 2 buckets in our office. One bucket was called the frog bucket, the other bucket was called cheese bucket. So frog is all the difficult, the unpleasant, the stressful things, things like creating the first minimal viable product, getting the first paying customer, raising that seed fund for your company, all those things. And they were the part of frog bucket. And the cheese bucket included all the glamorous, nice things, conducting team building activities, spending time, taking team on outings and all of that. And the mandate that we created in our company was, every single time you want to do something, you should begin your day by knocking off the frog first, which means you start your day with the most stressful thing, get it out of the park, and then you start doing the things that are part of your cheese buckets. And initially it was difficult. For me it was easy because I had already lived that whole life of being an entrepreneur, but my co-founders, who were then first-time entrepreneurs, found it a little difficult. So what we did was, we said, let us incentivize every time you eat a frog. Let us incentivize every time you do that most stressful thing first. And over a period of 40 days, it became an habit, it became an integral part of our life. So today, when I walk into my office, today when I walk into my company, when I talk to my teams, I make sure that my executive assistant puts all the difficult lists first on the top. And what I do is, from 7:30 a.m. in the morning to 10:30, I knock off all the difficult things. And then 10:30 onwards, it's all nice, easy, and pleasant things that we can continue to do. So this is again one more principle, very deeply researched and very thoroughly researched, and this has worked very well for me in my life. Now I come to the last learning from my life and my life experiences and what has worked. And this is something that is very, very close to my heart, because it has 2 very personal stories. You should always respect time, and life will respect you. And so before I begin talking about this, I have a confession to make. And I'm sure at least 30% of people in this room, if not more, have done the same mistake that I do. And the mistake is, we don't value time enough. When I say value time, I don't mean valuing just your time, but valuing time of others, time of your colleagues, your peers, your team members, people who give their time to you. If you don't value that, it's a sin. And I have done that for a very long time in my life, and I regret that. So what happens when somebody gives you their time, right? When someone gives you their time, they are giving you part of their life. They are giving most precious thing of their life to you, and unless you respect them, unless you respect their time, you will not be doing the right justice. So I'm sure all of us in India are heavily inspired by the Bollywood movies, and I'm no exception. I'm a huge fan of Shah Rukh Khan, and I kind of enjoyed watching him on screen and watching his movies. So there is one common pattern that SRK does in all his movies, right? Not him, but his scriptwriter and story writer and directors ask him to do. You take any movie of Shah Rukh Khan that has been successful, whether it is from the Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge to Dil To Pagal Hai to Rise and any of his movies, the hero always comes late. The hero always comes 11th hour, and the way they show it is they convince you that coming late is a style statement. And I kind of fell for it. I mean, I always used to go late to my class, go late to social gathering, go late to parties. Wherever I had to go, I was always late. And I kind of thought this was, a style statement. But much later in my life, I realized it was one of the biggest mistakes that I was doing. So I had an opportunity to meet my personal idol and someone who's very close to my heart, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam ji. And we were hosting a youth congress in my hometown, and I was leading the whole hosting of Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam ji in our hometown. And this was one day that I was very eagerly looking forward to. And the day had finally arrived, and we were supposed to meet Dr. Abdul Kalam ji at 8 o'clock in our university and host him and start the session. I had an unavoidable circumstance, and I got late for that meeting. And I was late by 3 minutes. And by the time I walked in, the session had already started, the doors were closed. With a lot of guilt, I walked into the room. I saw him, and I felt so blessed. For those of you, I'm sure all of you who have read about Kalamji, who have seen him, will undoubtedly agree that he is one of the finest scientists and the presidents that this world has seen. And beyond all that, he's a human being par excellence. And so rest of the day went by, and we got the opportunity and good fortune of spending the time with him, learning about his life lessons. And I was fortunate enough because I had to see him off at the airport. And when I was going to see him off at the airport, Kalamji held my hand and he said, "Raghav, better be an hour early than being a minute late, and this will transform your life." And it was such a profound statement. I'll just repeat it for your benefit. He said, "Better be an hour early than being a minute late." And since that day on till today, it has been more than 15 years. I have made sure every single day I go to any meeting, I call for any meeting, I go for any gathering, I'll be the first one to show up. As much as possible, I try to make sure that I respect people's time, I respect them sharing their life's most precious thing with me, and I always try to arrive on time. So these were 5 golden principles that transformed my life in making me a successful entrepreneur, national best-selling author, serial investor, and all of that. But one thing that I would urge all of you is treat time with utmost respect, and life will respect you. Thank you so much.